All right, I'm going to call this regular City Commission meeting to order for Monday, July 7th. All please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We begin, as always, by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land through the generations. Thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. And with that, I will hand it over to the city clerk for roll call, please.
Yes, and good evening, Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Commissioner Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell. Commissioner, thank you. Commissioner Werner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
Here.
And Mayor Shamrow.
Here. And actually, I'm just going to wedge this in before announcements from city clerk and city manager. I just wanted to thank our staff. Cherry Festival is always the biggest event of the year around here, and from our police to our DPS and everybody in between, I know they all worked very, very hard during the week, and the community looked very nice when I was walking around at several events, including the parade where I got to see a lot of our police and fire out, which was really great. We usually walk or bike, but it was only me for a while, and then Commissioner Treadwell joined. So we carpooled, Commissioner Treadwell and I did. So I'm very excited. It was very nice to participate in the parade again with some representation from the commission, but the commissioners who did not go, you were smart. It was very hot, but it was great to see our community out in force and all of our staff doing such a great job. So I wanted to take a moment to thank them for that. With that, I will hand it over for announcements from the city manager.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, and concerned citizens. I want to echo the sentiment from the Mayor in terms of thank you to all who ensured that we had a safe and successful Cherry Festival. So again, thank you for that. As a reminder, the city has launched the survey related to the Brown Bridge Trust Fund properties and is seeking ideas for park improvements. So I encourage you to take an opportunity to look at the survey that's on the city's website and make sure that residents share with us what their concerns are and what's important to them. Today we welcome David Wolfert, our new and first city facilities manager. David's a quick study. He has a degree in facilities management, and so he's already off to a great start, and I look forward to working with him. And a special well done to the city treasurer, Heidi Sheppy, and her team for an outstanding job regarding the city's most recent Standard & Poor's or S&P bond rating. We received a AA+ rating. Ooh. And to put that in perspective, it's been a decade since the city has been rated, and the last time we had a AA- rating. Ah. So kudos to Heidi and her team. I had the privilege of sitting in on those discussions, and it was impressive. And lastly, a special thank you to city leadership and all staff for their gracious support and collaborative spirit during my role as the acting city manager. So thank you all. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Deb. That's great. And great news from the finance department. We'll move over then to the city clerk for announcements.
Yes, I've got just a couple of announcements. They're really centered around meetings that are scheduled for this week, the week of July 7th. We have the City and Garfield Township Recreational Authority meeting on Wednesday, July 9th. That'll be at 7 p.m. at the Cathedral Barn, which is within the Historic Barns Park. And then the City Commission Complete Streets Ad Hoc Committee is also meeting this Wednesday, July 9th, but that'll be at 10 a.m. in the second floor committee room of the Governmental Center. We do have 3 different boards that we're currently recruiting volunteers for, so if you're interested in serving to help make city government work, we've got opportunities on the Local Officers Compensation Commission, which you'll be hearing from them actually this evening, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and Brown Bridge Advisory Committee. As always, I encourage anybody interested in those opportunities to contact the city clerk's office to talk about them and also to apply. And then lastly, filing deadline for the Office of Mayor and City Commission is July 22nd. That's at 4 p.m. and packets and all the paperwork that you need to file to run for election are available in the city clerk's office. And other than that, just the usual reminder to please speak directly into the microphone so folks can hear you. That's all I've got.
Fantastic. Well, let's have you keep it going with the consent calendar, please.
Yes, the purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public can ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed from it and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission, and such requests are automatically respected. If an item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. Item 1, consideration of approving the minutes of the June 16, 2025 meeting of the City Commission. Approval recommended. Item 2, consideration of introducing an amendment to the Traverse City Code of Ordinances, which would rezone the 300 and 400 blocks of South Union Street from C2, which is Neighborhood Center, to C4A, which is Regional Center, as recommended by the Planning Commission. Introduction and schedule for possible enactment on July 21st, 2025 recommended. Item 3, consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the transfer of location of an off-premises tasting room liquor license with outdoor service, Sunday AM, PM, and entertainment permits for Mammoth Distilling LLC, and consideration of authorizing the city clerk to issue the related registration, allowing the operation of the licenses and permits at 332 East Front Street. That's adoption and approval recommended. Item 4, consideration of adopting a resolution recommending approval of the request from CAB Cellars LLC, which is Laurentide Winery, for a new off-premises tasting room license for small winemaker and permits for dance entertainment, Sunday sales AM, outdoor service participation permit, and direct connection permit at 461 Munson Avenue, which is Briar Hill Hotel, and consideration of authorizing the city clerk to issue a registration for operation of the license and permits at 461 Munson Avenue. Adoption and approval recommended. Item 5, consideration of authorizing a contract for electric service upgrades at the Larry C. Hardy parking garage retail space. Approval recommended. Item 6, consideration of authorizing an expenditure of $2,500 from the Public Art Trust Fund and authorizing the necessary documents awarding the Paint It Forward grant as recommended by the Arts Commission. Approval recommended. Item 7, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for Google Workspace licenses. Approval recommended. Item 8, consideration of authorizing an amendment to the contract for software to monitor, enforce, and ensure compliance of short-term rentals, to extend the agreement by 3 years and narrow the scope and lessen the fee, to no longer provide for online application services, as that is handled through another city-wide platform. Approval recommended. Item 9, consideration of authorizing an agreement for Ashton Park playground improvements funded by Brown Bridge Trust Fund dollars as authorized by the electorate in November 2019. Approval recommended. Item 10, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for parts for 2 tanks at the wastewater treatment plant. Approval recommended. Item 11, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for a laboratory analyzer for testing wastewater samples. Approval recommended. Item 12, consideration of authorizing 2 blanket purchase orders for asphalt for use by the Streets Division for streets repairs. Approval recommended. Item 13, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for the repair of a John Deere wheel loader with all costs, less a $5,000 deductible to be covered by the city's insurance carrier. Approval recommended. And finally, item 14, consideration of authorizing the city treasurer finance director to write off uncollectible water and sewer utility balances in the amount of $17,252.15. Approval recommended.
Thank you for that. Would any commissioner like items pulled? Go ahead, Heather.
Number 2, please.
Just item number 2? Okay. Any others? Go ahead, Jackie.
Number 4 and number 8.
Okay, number 4 and number 8. Any others? Mitch?
Number 9.
Number 9. Okay. Any others? Seeing none, would anybody from the public like an item pulled that isn't 2, 4, 8, or 9? Give you a moment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a motion. Go ahead, Jackie.
I move that the consent calendar be adopted as modified.
Support.
Okay, I'll give it to Heather. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll start with item number 2. Commissioner Shaw, you had this pulled?
Yes. Well, first of all, in the nearly 6 years that I sat on the Planning Commission and the year and a half I've spent here, I have never seen an upzone go directly to the consent calendar from the Planning Commission. It seems very unusual to me. Also, one of the city commissioners who sit on the Planning Commission opposed this upzone, and I think it's only fair to hear why they dissented. You know, this is a major upzone from a neighborhood commercial to a core commercial. And I actually think this deserves our attention and it deserves some discussion. The Ticker last week ran a survey saying, how optimistic are you about the future of Traverse City? It came back that the audience was only 43% optimistic, which doesn't sound like optimism to me. It sounds like pessimism. And I feel that moving important items like this to a consent calendar that do not require debate feeds into a public mistrust. I'm not entirely opposed to this upzone, but there are some issues I think it's important for us all to discuss. And in light of that, I move that item 2 from the consent calendar be placed under new business for consideration later in the meeting.
Well, because it was pulled from the consent calendar, we can have the discussion now. And so it's an item to be discussed as if it were on
But
the
we could-
new business.
So it's up now for individual consideration, just as if it were under new business.
Yeah.
All right.
And this, just for clarification, is introduction. It does have to come back on July 21st, just so you know also.
Okay, so again, I'm not entirely opposed to this upzone, but I think a few things got lost in those 21 pages of consent calendar documentation. And the first one is scale. The current C2 zoning is for residentially scaled buildings with limited parking. There's a 6,000 square foot limit for the gross floor area per floor. So that's not a big building. And there is a maximum height of 30 feet, unless you add that residential floor, which nobody seemed to be interested in doing. This will change to a minimum height of 30 feet. You can't build anything new unless you build it at 30 feet, and no minimum width or area. In other words, you could have a 45-foot building that takes up an entire block. The second issue I see is use. The C2 is, and this is quoted from the master plan, it's designed to reflect a residential flavor that minimizes impacts, e.g., as in examples, noise, light, traffic on neighborhood residences. And the uses are brew pubs and convenience stores and florists and fruit and vegetable markets and hardware, the things that you see there right now. The C4A is a commercial core, and again, I'm quoting from the master plan, that is a social and economic center that provides a mix of office, residential, public, and commercial uses, like convention centers. That's a big difference as well. The third issue I see is infrastructure. The C2 limits impervious to 70%. The C4A removes all limitations. And remember, our downtown right now is over 3/4 impervious. And nearly all that runoff goes straight into the Boardman River, and that's according to the 2018 stormwater management plan. And I'm sure you're all aware of the E. coli problems that we've had every single time it rains during the summer here on our beaches. And that's because we have an impervious problem. The stormwater management plan has a couple of very interesting paragraphs about the current ordinance requiring on-site capture. And I'm sorry to read this to you, but it's really important to understand. I'm quoting here. Despite the existing stormwater ordinance, in practice, the ordinance is more discretionary. In the downtown area, it is in the interest of the developer to maximize their building footprint and therefore impervious area. This practice can make stormwater treatment more complicated and require turning to more unconventional and expensive methods such as subsurface storage or green roofs. Because of this, the city will negotiate an in lieu payment in exchange for a waiver to the stormwater ordinance. The city is then able to use these funds at the developer's behalf to treat stormwater in another area. Using this discretionary method of enforcing the stormwater ordinance is positive in the sense that the city is able to obtain more money for stormwater projects. However, This method is also inequitable between developers and not fully transparent. Furthermore, there is currently no method of tracking the negotiated payment in association to the amount of area that is not treated. During my nearly 6 years on the Planning Commission, I saw with my own eyes these discretionary practices in practice. The final issue I see is transportation and mobility, and this comes from the master plan. The commercial core is not short of transportation challenges and opportunities. A future priority for the commercial core is to continue to connect it with other parts of the city through non-motorized infrastructure. My question is, how about connecting Old Town to other parts of town and out of town without running traffic down 7th Street? The Mobility Action Plan has 7th Street as a vision bike network. 7th Street can be one thing and it can be another thing, but I don't think it can be all things for all mobilities. It's just not big enough. 7th Street is not due for reconstruction until 2029. 14th Street, which is the other way to go, is not due for reconstruction until 2028, and maybe those timelines are okay if planning starts immediately. But in the meantime, that leaves 7th Street as the de facto corridor for traffic coming off East 8th Street and heading towards Division. Larger buildings and larger daytime employee populations coming and going out of Old Town. What is the plan, I ask, for getting traffic out of Old Town smoothly? East and west, north and south. Upzones like this one, they're putting the cart before the horse, and they're contributing to a lack of trust. One business asks for a conditional rezone, and 2 whole blocks are gobbled up. Yes, it is supported by the master plan, but it is not currently supported by the infrastructure. So I have some conditions that I could attach to this where I would consider supporting the upzone, but at this point, I'd like to throw it back and ask for some comments from other commissioners.
Well, before we comment on, we have to have a motion or Commissioner
This
Treadwell.
is why I wanted it moved. That's why I made this motion, and it was totally valid to make that motion according to Robert's.
That doesn't really make a,
That was the
respectfully,
majority.
doesn't make a difference in terms of whether it's under new business or
Yeah.
items removed from the consent calendar. It's the same protocol.
Commissioner Treadwell, are you going to make a motion, or did you?
I had responses, but first I'll seek further discussion. I'll make the motion that the amendments to the Traverse City Code of Ordinances, which would rezone the 300 and 400 blocks of South Union Street from C2 Neighborhood Center to C4A Regional Center as recommended by the City Planning Commission, be introduced and scheduled for possible enactment on July 21st, 2025. Now that I've made my motion.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Okay, now go right ahead with any commentary.
The previous commissioner said that this is a significant upzoning and it's not supported by infrastructure. I would counter that by saying that while that might look to be the case on paper, it is not an upzoning from the material conditions on the ground. The built environment is majority non-conforming properties. Most of the properties there do not meet the C2 classification. They do meet the C4 classification. So on paper, we actually have an effective downzoning. If the vast majority of the buildings that exist on these 2 blocks were to have significant water damage, to burn down, to be hit by a tornado, have some other disaster happen, they could not be rebuilt in their current form with the current zoning. The change to C4A would allow that, and it is much more reflective of the built environment. Talking about issues like traffic, before the interstate highway system was built, the predecessor to what's now US 31 went down Union Street right through this block. This had been the commercial corridor running through this part of town, and proportionately, used to handle a much larger share of the city's north-south traffic and east-west traffic going down streets like 7th Street. There's been significant complaints about about the cost of parking decks in this town when Old Town is often below capacity, and I'd see as a way to significantly encourage the utilization of the Old Town parking deck. We won't necessarily have a lot of trips coming through this on a hour-by-hour sense if people are working in one place, parking a block away, and then able to handle multiple other errands in the downtown area by foot or bike. That would have a net reduction in vehicle trip ends rather than an increase in vehicle trip ends. A concern about impervious surface, while yes, that is in the abstract a valid concern, I again look at the built environment, the infrastructure that we already have. We have higher impervious surface levels on these 2 blocks on all 4 sides of the street than our C2 classification would like to see. But to my knowledge, that hasn't resulted in higher and more problematic discharge at stormwater outfall B, which is directly to the north and would be served by most of this area. In fact, though we have had a number of E. coli alerts for a couple, but not all beaches and not in all stormwater events this year, those have been largely attributed to geese and other wildlife that are in specific locations, not as a result of runoff from roofs and parking lots in our downtown area.
Thank you, Mitch. And Commissioner Anderson, I know you had your hand up.
I did, thank you. I'm the commissioner on the Planning Commission that voted against this when it came before that group. And my concerns had primarily to do with impact on the surrounding residential zones. You know, these 2 blocks of Union Street directly are abutted by R1B and R2 zones, so residential zoning, and I was not reassured when I asked how those neighboring property owners had been informed about the possibility of the upzoning and the impact. Apparently, there's some reliance on public meetings that were held in the context of the master plan, which happened in 2021 and 22. So I'm not sure that the immediacy of this action would have been felt by those who were offering input a number of years ago. So I am always in favor of more communication with residents and more awareness of impact on neighborhoods than less. And so I was really surprised that there was only one public comment during the discussion at the Planning Commission level. And that one actually was from a resident further down Union Street and was concerned about impact on traffic and made note of the schools that were further down Union Street. So I'm feeling that this is, as Commissioner Shaw mentioned, it began as a request for a rezone of one particular property and has grown considerably, and I want to be sure not only that we are properly protecting the neighborhoods as our strategic plan reinforced that there is an imperative to do, but that we have heard adequately from the people who live in the directly abutting properties. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Shaw, you had said there were some things, and I just wanted to keep us moving in
Sure.
orderly way. So you had said there were some things you were looking for, if you wanted to share those.
I would support the upzone with two conditions. One, that the 45-foot maximum building height and associated 100% impervious be allowed only with a green roof. And that's an amendment. It would be an amendment to the current zoning, so it would have to go back to the Planning Commission, but I'm sure they could get that done in a jiffy. Secondly, this is a bigger one, that a plan for transportation connections between the downtown commercial core, which would now include Old Town, the commercial hubs, which include West Front, East 8th and 14th, and the connections from those places to our highways get underway immediately with a completion date of, say, next fall, 2026. Without a plan, without a transportation plan, we are inviting our streets to randomly become high-traffic corridors. We'll get more impervious surfaces, we'll get less neighborhood, fewer trees, more stormwater, more heat and noise and general pollution like the E. coli at our beaches. None of this is good for us who live here or the visitors who come to spend time in our city. Density development without a transportation plan is an ecological disaster waiting to happen, and it will be the end of Traverse City as the guardian of the Boardman River and the bays. We have a mobility action plan. We have a master plan. We have a strategic plan. Let's sit down at a table and think about this together, and I suggest that we start an ad hoc once the complete streets policy ad hoc is finished, and we get together and work this out. Those are my two conditions.
Do we have other comments from other commissioners? Go ahead, Jackie.
I would be very supportive of an ad hoc that, as discussed.
Is that an amendment to the motion?
And it has to be accepted by the person who moved and the person who seconded, if that was it. Otherwise, it could be voted on. If it doesn't pass, we could prefer, have another motion made with that inclusion. So those are your two options with that. Commissioner Warner?
Maybe it's a question for the city clerk. Like, we're being asked just to schedule this for a future meeting. So would detailed amendments fit better at that time than tonight?
I think it could honestly go either way, truthfully.
I would say that these are amendments that have been proposed tonight. Minimally, it would give all the rest of us 2 weeks to think about it. And that would work too. See the contemplative look of some of my commissioners here. So is that, well, first let's ask. Commissioner Treadwell, you were the first to make it. Do you want that?
Nope.
Okay. So that is, we will have the motion as stands now for the vote. Are there any further comments from the commissioners right now? Seeing none, I'm going to open up for public comment on this item. Would anybody like to make public comment on this item?
And I'll state the rules for public comment this evening. For anyone addressing the commission, please, if you're willing, state your name and address. Indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, or a city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment. When your time has elapsed, the timer will beep, and we ask that all language be respectful to everyone. Thank you.
My name is Scott Hardy. I used to be a resident of the city of Traverse City. I'm now in Garfield Township. I'm here representing the two property owners that initiated this request for a rezone. And just, I understand a number of the comments that were made about the impact on stormwater, the impact on traffic. One of the things that's important, and obviously I've been involved in this for a long time, is we want affordable housing in the downtown area. We want people to be able to at least have an apartment they could rent, they could buy, and one of the ways to do that is to consolidate under C4A some of the lots into one building and maybe use the 45-foot height. We haven't committed to that necessarily. But what we're doing with C2 right now is there are 2 lots on Union Street that are both available for purchase. In order to develop those lots, we would have had to build 2 independent buildings there. The cost of doing so is ridiculously expensive at $300 a square foot to construct. And so what we were looking for was the ability to take the 2 lots and eliminate some of the impervious surface, take advantage of the parking spaces available in the Old Town deck, and provide what we thought were affordable, maybe not under the pure definition of affordable, but affordable housing in the downtown area. This was going to be a development of 24 lots. What it did is it morphed into the 2 blocks of Union Street needing the same disposition should they decide to develop. We lost a long-term law firm in the 400 block of Union Street that moved out simply because C2 zoning wouldn't allow them to do what they needed to do to be able to retain employees and expand some of their office space there, so they left. We now have another law firm in that building who's going to be forced with the same situation eventually to do the same thing. So the fact that the vast majority of the buildings are already non-conforming there means that C4A basically brings us into compliance with the rest of the city and the zoning that we think is most appropriate there. And as far as the environmental impact, a lot of that can be done at site plan review. If there's some kind of a remediation system that the city would like, a swirl system, whatever it may be, those are all things the developer would entertain. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Any final? Go ahead, Heather.
Well, you've heard my concerns 2 weeks ahead of the introduction of this at our next meeting, and I hope that you will consider them closely and my suggestions for some conditions to put on this, and that we can have a lively debate in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. With that, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson,
No.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
and Mayor Shamro.
Yes. Motion passes, so that will be brought back to our meeting on the 21st.
Yes.
And then we are on to item number 4, sorry, I just jumped ahead of it, which is the CAB Sellers, and I am so sorry, I forgot to note who pulled this, so
That
thank
was
you,
me.
Jackie, go right ahead.
And it was simply, it was a very arbitrary decision to choose between 3 and 4. I would like to ask of my colleagues whether there is any interest in forming an ad hoc to evaluate our current process for the awarding of redevelopment liquor licenses. I know we have, with the city clerk's assistance, we've been able to do some follow-up on the healthy drinking culture work that was done earlier, and I would just like to be sure that we as a body are comfortable with the approach that we're taking to awarding redevelopment liquor licenses. It seems that the proliferation is primarily in that type of license, and I personally would like to explore whether there are boundaries warranted, or if there's any interest in boundaries, and you know, how we might evaluate the impact that this has had on our community. So it's a narrower version, I think, of some of the work that was done earlier on the Healthy Drinking Culture Project. So
Thank you for
that's my
that,
question.
Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Treadwell, did you want to comment?
Yes, I am curious. A lot of liquor license approvals are bookkeeping matters that are largely regulated by the state enabling legislation, not by local law. So do you have specific examples of other municipalities that have differing approval processes that you would think we should follow?
You know, I don't. But one of the things that I noted is that the state-awarded liquor licenses are a limited commodity, and as such, they're much more expensive for new businesses to acquire, and that they seem to be awarded based on per capita population, whereas the redevelopment liquor licenses aren't limited by the population of the awarding municipality. And so there's no either market-driven or legally driven cap on the number that there can be, is my observation. Maybe I have that wrong.
There is a cap. It is very high,
Because of
I'll
our
acknowledge.
development.
It's roughly 265 are available in the DDA district, but there is a cap, but it's
And I've
265.
looked at the number of licenses in other communities of our population, and both tourism-oriented and non-tourism-oriented, and we are outliers. We have an extraordinary number of liquor licenses within our community, and I think it's important for us to regularly ask the question, is that the way we want it to be? And so that to my mind is really the mission of such a group, is to say, are we all happy with the way we're doing this, or are there ways that we could make it, objectives to be determined? Could it be safer? Could there be less law enforcement required? Could there, any number of benefits, pros and cons? But I'd like help from other commissioners in looking at that.
Commissioner Anderson, I think I would say that this is a specific property, specific license, and I appreciate your bringing it up here as an opportunity to bring it up. I would say that this would be something that maybe reach out to the clerk's office to send an email out to see if anybody would like to join you on that with a bit more scope in that. What I'm hearing in some of those are, some of the comments you've made are things that we covered at the Better Drinking Culture review that wasn't that long ago, so I understand periodic reviews. But if you would like to put forward something and have other commissioners join you in that request, I would also ask that, and as part of that, that the city attorney make sure that she's looped in, because we have had some times where we've had presentations that then touched on a lot of things that would actually be illegal for us to do. So I'm totally fine if we have that brought as a separate issue in a discussion, but I think that would be the proper way to do it through our way that we do that now. But I appreciate you bringing up the question and us having that brought up here. So thank you for that. With that, would anybody like to make the motion?
I did just want to point out respectfully that to place this, if you wanted to have a discussion regarding formation of an ad hoc on the agenda, we can certainly see if there are other commissioners that are interested in joining you, but one city commissioner can place
No.
something on a regular meeting.
Oh, they can. Okay, sorry. I thought it was 3 for some reason.
That's
That's
for
totally
study
fine
sessions
too.
and special meetings.
Thank you for
Yep,
that reminder
yep.
of procedure. Thank you for that.
Well,
Perfect.
with that said, that will be the way I'll pursue it, and I'm happy to, if I can find the correct motion, I will make that motion.
Thank you.
Okay.
All the way at the top
I
here.
think I've got the right one here.
Okay.
I move that the resolution recommending approval of the request from CAB Sellers LLC, William Bramer and Susan Bramer, to issue to it a new off-premises tasting room license for small winemaker and dance entertainment, Sunday sales AM, outdoor service, participation permit, and direct connection permits be adopted, and that the city clerk be authorized to issue a liquor license registration to CAB Sellers LLC for it to operate such license and permits at 461 Munson Avenue, Traverse City, Michigan, 49686.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Stanley. Any further conversation on this item? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for that, and we'll look forward to that follow-up. On to item number 8, and this is the consideration of authorizing an amendment to the software, and this was also you, Commissioner Anderson,
This-
correct?
this was-
I remembered that time.
Yes, this was my request. As you'll recall, I, during a prior study session, made a presentation on police power enforcement of short-term rentals. And I am, as discussed at that time, intending to bring it back for more detail, more discussion. I think we talked about the August or September timeframe. And so I am asked the initiating director of planning whether there was some flexibility in this 3-year contract where if, for instance, new issues for enforcement arose as a result of our work, whether there was some flexibility to incorporate any additional monitoring activities by Granicus. And the impression that I got in that response was no. And so my question then is tying ourselves into a 3-year contract a great idea, given that this police power short-term rental ordinance issue is still imminent? And, would we be better off looking at a 3-year contract based on 1-year releases, for instance?
City Clerk, I know you've been handling this as far as correct for the enforcement the enforcement
More so
now
the-
in-house now, right?
More so the application process. I know Mr. Winter is approaching the podium, but
Okay.
the city commission, can always put in termination provisions in a contract. So if you wanted to not, it could be a 3-year agreement, but could be terminated within a certain period of time. So there is that kind of flexibility, but I'll leave the rest to Mr. Winter.
Yeah, and so the 3-year agreement contract is what Granicus, that's their business model and how they operate. Now, to the question about the police power, what this software does is identify the location of those operating without a license. And then we can identify those with a license with our database. So any changes to the police power and stuff like that doesn't affect the identification of illegal short-term rentals. An illegal short-term rental is an illegal short-term rental. And this is our tool, our only tool actually for enforcement with the magistrate, because we have to have some sort of evidence to show, and that's what this tool does, is capture the video evidence, all the records of their the reviews of when people stayed, when they posted their thing online, when they pulled it off, all that stuff.
Okay, so I think what you're telling me is that the Granicus service that we receive is a very simple go, no-go. This rental is legal, this rental is not legal.
Yep, more or less, yeah. So we had 3 modules that we used. The licensing, where people would go online. That's the one that's not included in this proposal because we can use the ClearGov application, so we don't have to pay for that fee anymore. And then it's the address identification, and then we can issue all our enforcement letters directly from that site. So we can send, 100 letters at one time with one click to all the ones that we've identified as illegal to let them know that they're operating.
And if
against the
our
law.
definition of legal or illegal were to change in some way, can they accommodate changes?
I guess I'm not understanding the question. If we change the definition of legal and illegal?
Yeah, if there were some stipulations regarding legal operation of short-term rentals. I don't know, it could be a duration of a license. It could be specific characteristics about the owner of the license. I mean, how detailed are their enforcement capabilities, and is there any opportunity to modify those going forward?
So this is really just helping us identify the ones that are licensed and not licensed. So that's what makes them legal or illegal. All the things that you mentioned would be considered at the time of issuing a license. So that would be before this enforcement and monitoring would even come into play.
So I think the answer to your question is yes, essentially.
And
Because
Lauren's shaking her head, our attorney, I just wanted to.
Right.
Okay.
So
Can you use your mic, yeah?
Sorry.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing the planning director say is that the information that's given to Granicus is whether or not the particular property is licensed. That all happens through the internal staff process. It doesn't happen through Granicus. And then they just provide feedback. The Granicus software provides feedback on whether they see a property that is not licensed doing business as a short-term rental, and then provides that to staff for enforcement.
For enforcement?
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So it would change. Is this question?
Yes, for Director Winter. Would you mind reiterating the answer to my question about how the public can view where short-term rentals are in the city and how they can comment on what's going on in their neighborhoods?
So like with any enforcement issue, if someone's concerned of something in violation of the code, they need to call our office or the code enforcement officer. Granicus is not forward-facing. It has individual logins because that's, I mean, we don't want people just logging in and issuing
I was kind of
enforcement
looking at
letters. Yeah.
the
but
maps that we have now
Yeah,
for
so
the city.
GIS does coordinate with the clerk's office, and then they, I think on a monthly basis, map all the new ones in addition to the current ones. So it's
And you
updated
can
on the
find
20th.
that, where can,
If you go to
find
the
that.
licensing section of our website and then you go to short-term rentals, there's the map of everybody that has a short-term rental license in the city with a month, roughly month lag.
good.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get that out in the public record.
Yeah, and I think that map actually has 3 tabs in the bottom left for tourist homes, vacation homes, and ADUs, all 3 of which are licensed through the clerk's office.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Great. All right, do we have other questions or a motion?
I'll make the motion that the mayor and city clerk execute an amendment to the agreement with Granicus LLC to extend the agreement for 3 years through June 30th, 2028 for short-term rental monitoring, location identification, and enforcement, and remove online applications from the scope at an annual rate of $18,885.86, with such amendment subject to approval as to its substance by acting city manager and its form by the city attorney, with funds to come from the planning department budget.
Do a second.
Support.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, and lastly, item number 9 for Ashton Park Playground. Commissioner Treadwell, you had this pulled. What, do you have questions?
Yes, recognizing that this was one of the projects I identified in 2019 when we asked the voters and the voters approved utilizing Brown Bridge Trust funds for a number of parks improvement projects, and we have started this process again. Perhaps this is a question more for Heidi than it is for Michelle, but is there a process, considering in the past 5 years we have seen projects go over budget or have equipment delays or other encumbrances happen, is there a way that we or a future city commission has flexibility to amend the project list?
And just to clarify for the, whomever, I'll let you two draw between the answer on that. I'm guessing it's Heidi. Are you clarifying that as in if the time ran out or it went over budget and there wasn't money, like what,
In either
zone in the
situation,
question?
yes.
Okay.
So I can say, as far as the budget's $50,000 for this, $60,000 for that, it's never going to come out to $50,000 exactly. So we have an unassigned parks code in the fund. So if it goes over, it gets put into the unassigned parks fund code, and if it's under, we take from that. So we have the pool of money with the assigned based on what is approved, and the extra sits in the unassigned until it's utilized. And that is accounted for in the budget.
And you don't expect there to be a significant overage that means that a certain project can't get built?
Not right now.
I see a lot of no head shaking from a lot of staff, so. Any other questions? Tim and then
Just-
Heather.
Yeah, just to follow up on that. So it's my understanding in 2019, back in 2014, with voter approval of expenditure of Brown Bridge Trust Fund funds, the city commissions at both times passed resolutions?
Yes.
So resolutions indicating the priorities for the park. So it's not, it's a resolution which can be broken. It's not a violation of law. So if run out of time, run out of money, you make a modification. You declare a mea culpa, we messed up, they messed up, and yeah, so it's really just the will of the people holding a city commission to their resolution.
Heather?
Yes, I would never have pulled this from the consent calendar for this reason, but there is a very unique addition that's going into this Ashton Park playground. And maybe Michelle could very quickly tell us what this is and how long it lasts.
Thank you.
And you do know what I'm talking about, right?
The locust?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Commissioner Shaw. It's nice to be able to talk about this. It's a very exciting project. So when I first started working on the senior center project over 2 years ago now, I looked at the site plans and saw all the black locust that was planned for removal, and I thought, no, that's not going into a wood chipper. We're doing something with it. So I quickly got together with Gosling Zubek, and we discussed salvaging the black locust to create a playground, and Ashton Park was the next on the list for the Brown Bridge Parks Improvement Fund projects. And we were able to harvest it and save it. We gave the contractors a certain amount that they had to save the logs for length, and we were able to save about 30 to 40 logs. So the whole playground is centered around not using plastic, using natural play materials, and having 2 different play areas for under 5 years old and then 5 to 12. And then we worked with a local company, thank you TC Millworks. They've been preparing the logs for construction. And the great thing about black locust is it doesn't have to be treated, and it will last in the ground 50 plus years before you even have to worry about it.
Great.
So we are taking trees from one park, putting them in another, and they'll be here long after I retire.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Great
thank
question.
you.
Really quick, though, actually, I'm going to derail us for a moment because I don't do that often enough. And actually, Michelle, it'll be for you. So we've had in the news recently other trees that are unfortunately going to have to be removed because their lifespan is completed. When we have trees like that, I know there were some inquiries. Do we have a policy about repurposing some of these fine old trees that might have some good logs in them? I appreciate, this was an amazing thing that you did here with the black locusts. Is that something that we try to do with a lot of our trees that might produce some very usable materials? Or was this kind of an exception you were able to work on and we need a more comprehensive policy?
To be honest, the idea came from experience I had in the past. We don't have a policy right now. You're referring to the cottonwood that Ticker wrote about that we have to take down at the mouth of the Boardman. I think in instances where it's safe to do so, because typically you would want the logs to be of a certain length to be usable for building construction, the cottonwood might not be the best example, just given its location and how it's going to have to be cut down. But no, we don't have a policy right now where trees that could be used for future uses that aren't the wood chipper, we don't have that right now.
I'd be very interested in something like that in the future, but we will not belabor that point right now. So thank you for that. Could I get either another question or a motion, please? So I don't lose track of where we are. Go ahead, Heather.
I move that staff recommend that the City Commission execute an agreement with Nature Playscapes in the amount of $87,325.70, which includes a 10% contingency for the construction of Ashton Park Playground improvements with funds available in Fund 499.
And I just want to add to that, just sort of as a housekeeping matter, that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute that contract with its subject to approval as to its substance by the acting city manager and its form by the city attorney.
Perfect.
Support.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Shaw and Treadwell. Any other comments on this item? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, we will now move on to new business, which is we'll start with a presentation by the Local Officers Compensation Chairwoman, Kate Green.
And I'd like to just jump in here real fast. I just want to say what I always do when this comes up, which is, and Ms. Green, who chairs the LOCC, may say the same thing, but the LOCC is charged with determining the compensation of the City Commission, and we always encourage you to not think of this as compensation for yourselves, but for the role. So it's essentially the process is that their determination goes into effect 30 days from now, retroactively, unless 2/3 of the City Commission votes to reject it. So it's set up that they're really the body that makes this determination. And with that caveat, I'll stop talking. Thank you.
Thanks, Benjamin. Hello, everybody. My name is Kate Green. I'm a city resident, and I am the chairperson of the LOCC, as we like to call it, LOC. I don't know if I really have a presentation. I think everything is pretty well covered in the minutes. But we did meet a couple of times. We meet every other year. We have to. And we talked about maybe getting together next year to just kind of keep this a little bit fresher in our mind. But this year we actually looked at our peer communities to make sure that the data was still good. And we were able to still choose, I think we ended up with actually 6 cities that were paying a stipend. And so we looked at those. Traverse City for the 3 different commissioner pay levels, kind of we're either mid to, second position, depending on the role. But yeah, definitely in the range. And so we ended up using the Detroit All Urban Index, which ended up being a 2.8%, which was just kind of on the face of it, really tracks well with what we're seeing in some of the, I'm a human resources professional, and so that tracks pretty closely with what we're seeing in other, wage increases for the year. So, so it made sense. And yes, we looked at township things, and this is where we ended up. So yeah, 2.8% across the board. So I think the final numbers for the Office of City Commissioner were $8,155. For the Mayor Pro Tem, $10,338. And then the Office of Mayor, $12,522. Those were the 3 stipend amounts. And then we also looked at the Board of Tax Review and proposed the same 2.8% increase there. And $313 is the daily per diem for that position as well. So, do you have any questions?
Thank you for your research.
Okay.
So there's no action for the commission to take regarding city commission compensation unless you were to choose to reject the increase. The one motion that is necessary for your consideration absolutely is to approve the Board of Tax Review increase, and that motion is in your packet.
It's scroll down. Go ahead, Tim's on it.
I'll make the motion that the compensation for the Board of Tax Review be increased to $313 per day for 2025, which reflects the All Urban Consumer Price Index for December 2023 through December 2024, and that the 2026 per day rate be increased by the Urban Consumer Price Index rate for the period of December 2024 through December 2025.
Second.
I'll give that to Jackie. Thank you, Commissioner Warner and Commissioner Anderson. Any other questions or comments on this item? Any public comment on this item? Actually, I will add one thing, that in the report, it said we are currently looking for 2 seats. We actually just had an ad hoc before this meeting, and the ad hoc is putting forward 1 name, so we are still looking for 1 more person to serve on the Officers' Compensation Commission. So just throw that out there while we have the mic for a moment. But with that, I'll bring it back for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for that work that you guys do a lot of deep diving on, so much appreciated. Now we will move on to item number 2 under new business, which is the planned unit development, Tim Pulliam, and for 1032 Woodmere Avenue. I had to make sure I got the address right. So we'll have Sean kick this off, it looks like.
Yeah, good evening, Sean Winter, City Planning Director. So this was before you, I believe, in December, upon recommendation of the Planning Commission, when the City Commission approved the applicant to apply for a PUD on a piece of land less than 3 acres. This is just over 1 acre, but again, the PUD is designed for a path forward when you have unique situations, context properties, which this property certainly is one. It's very narrow, it's got 3 street frontages, therefore 3 street front setbacks, and a very curvilinear property line along the western boundary. So the applicant, once they got the green light, moved forward with their application. We had multiple meetings with the design team, including representatives from the County Construction Code Office and the Northwest Regional Airport Authority, because the south portion of this property is in the airport approach zone. To understand that, the applicant continued to refine the plans until the point where the design team moved it forward to the Planning Commission. They reviewed it and have recommended it to now the City Commission. So it's a mixed-use development consisting of 4 buildings. The southernmost building would be the largest, and it would have most likely 2 retail tenants at this time. The north 3 buildings will be residential. They're proposed as 3 stories. They could, under the zoning, go up to 4. The applicant's still waiting to kind of work through the numbers to see what's feasible in that regard. One thing that's unique about this development is it will be built on a single foundation with underground parking for the entire development. So that will include approximately 130 parking spaces. Throughout the iterative process, there was talk of maybe decertifying Sheffer Street. It's not really, it's just a gravel road. It's access to 2 properties. Maybe making that more into a public trailhead, as the applicant has mentioned, and I picked my daughter up from sailing camp today. Hull Park is just parked cars everywhere because there's not a lot of access points to the trail or the lake. And so that was one thing that they were trying to provide along Sheffer Street. Upon recommendation of the Planning Commission, they decided to forego the parking lot idea and do a paving of the existing street with on-street parking, so more like a traditional city street. That would be public parking for any of the users of the recreational assets that we have here in the city. So with that, I think that pretty much, oh, sorry, the other thing is the trail connector. That would be through the city property, and that would connect Carver Street down to the Boardman Lake Loop. They've been working through that, and with the Carver Street bike lane, this will now provide direct access for the Traverse Heights neighborhood directly with that loop and other non-motorized destinations throughout the city. So with that, I will turn it over to the applicant to kind of give an overview of his project, and I'll be available to answer more questions. And again, no action is needed at this time. There will be a public hearing scheduled for August 4th.
Hello, Tim Pulliam, 516 West 11th. I am a city resident, also the owner of this Woodmere property. It is currently the TC Millworks property. We have kind of outgrown the space and decided to relocate over to Arrow Park. Although we did process the locust logs on this site recently, which was pretty fun. And I'm excited to see some sort of a program for trees in the city at the end of their life cycle. We've been lucky enough to work with a few of them, but there wasn't a specific policy or anything. We just had people drop off some maple from Slabtown and drop off some oak from Central Neighborhood. And I worked with Michelle to get the locust and get that prepped. So it'll be nice to see something more official. I think we figured there's about 20,000 pounds of carbon stored in those locust logs that instead of getting just chipped and returning to the atmosphere after all the hard work those trees did, they're going to get turned back into playground equipment. That's pretty exciting. So on that note, that's kind of some of the care and considerations that went into what we're going to be doing there on the Woodmere project. When we outgrew our space, operating our business at TC Millworks in that location, obviously when we got the business, we knew that that location was going to be at some point a good opportunity for development in the community. I kind of look at that as a corridor that brings people into our city. We're near the city boundary. There hasn't been a lot of development around the lakeshore. I live in the city and use the Boardman Lake Loop a lot. I think a lot about, wouldn't it be great if there were more places for us to stop and gather or have a picnic or grab a sandwich or get a coffee. I see the parking lot at Hull Park often, and basically from April, as soon as the trail's free of snow, until almost Christmas time, there's people parked all over the railroad tracks and the lawn at Hull Park. And so, a friend called me when he heard that we were relocating the wood shop from Brick Wheels and said, what are you going to do? And that's where we started. About a year ago, we started talking about having like an adventure hub that really gives Brick Wheels a spot to have a new home, brings in some other retail tenants, and probably some sort of food and beverage, whether it's a coffee shop, bakery, restaurant. And then on the 3 buildings to the north there, the first building will be the retail on the south end of the property, just add some density and put some housing in. The 3 buildings to the south are technically built by right. They're within the 6,000 square foot footprint. So we could build those just on their own, but the PUD is really going to allow us to maximize not only the property, but also the public benefit. Our friends at TART and also the newerly formed Safe Street Alliance have been talking about additional east-west corridors for non-motorized transportation. We're kind of in a pretty good location for that, coming in on Carver Street. That was part of TART's plan and part of the Mobility Action Plan, and I think maybe even part of the city's master plan when you look at where those connections would be. So we're right there. This development kind of unlocks the opportunity to get it all done at once. We'll obviously have a lot of excavation work to be done to get all the foundations in for the underground parking. It's a good opportunity to terrace that down and create a non-motorized connection to the Boardman Lake Loop there. And I guess that's really about it as far as development goes. It'll be 4 buildings. One is larger than what would be by right, the 6,000 square foot footprint. It'll be a 10,000 square foot footprint. We did think about how we're going to build that 10,000 square foot footprint though, and each floor is stepped back. So I think the total square footage of the large retail falls around 24,000. And we did that because although, you know, the foundations are going to cover all of the ground, we're going to have green space on top to make it feel like 4 separate buildings. It was important for us to keep 3 of them a little bit smaller and to step back the one that's bigger, just because it is a ways across the street there, across Woodmere to the residential side of the neighborhoods, but we don't want it to really feel obtrusive to the neighborhoods, like if we just did like one giant building over there. In the city's master plan and some renderings for what's possible for that corridor, it does kind of show like one giant development. But I think it's going to look nice to have the scale of the different buildings and things like that. So that's it. Any questions or concerns?
Go ahead, Heather.
Well, I think it's a really interesting project, and I love that one business that's outgrowing its area is talking to another business that's outgrowing its area, and that, you know, this is another placemaking effort for, you called it an adventure hub, for people who want a social district in neighborhoods who don't want to go downtown. I think it's a really great idea, but I do have a few questions, however, therefore, Director Winter. So in all this paperwork here, there were a couple of things that I wish you could elaborate on. One is the potential contingencies in this statement, which is, it should be noted that the city-owned property to the west was transferred to the city from the precursor to the Michigan Department of Natural Resources in the 1940s with deed restrictions limiting its use to parks and highways. Could you elaborate on that? I mean, are there potential issues coming down the line with this? Well,
I can, Sean.
Sure.
Our attorney would like to.
So it's just was in the deed when the city acquired the property, that it can only be used for highways
Parks and
or
highways,
parks.
which is a very strange combination.
It's because I think it came from a precursor and there was a railroad involved at the time as well. And so it's kind of a relic of that property. There's nothing about this development that encroaches on that property.
Okay.
So there's no involvement of that deed restriction for this project.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. Second question: What is the current riparian setback that would have to be with this trail extension? And I mean, there is landscaping between Woodmere Avenue and the Tart while maintaining the natural lakeshore riparian buffer. What is the riparian buffer for that area right now?
So I would have to look up what the water setback is for that multiple family zoning. I don't know it offhand, but I just want to, their development is not on that parcel. So they're not developing up to the shoreline. There's a whole city parcel and street between what's being developed and that. And then the trail that's connecting is all upland from the existing shoreline trail. So nothing's that's encroaching closer to the trail than it is now, or closer to the water.
Okay, so that brings me to my final question, which is about this trail. And in the packet, again, I think it's number 10. Approval of the PUD does not authorize permitting for construction.
Correct.
Additional details will be necessary to work out and will be addressed through consultation with city staff before construction permits are issued, ensuring all ordinances and standards are met. So I just want to, you can elaborate on that. So this
Yeah.
is about the trail.
Yeah,
Right.
so like with anything, like if the planning commission approves a site plan, they can't begin construction until only after the site plan approval, they secure all their necessary permits. And that's kind of the same situation here. So they have a site plan. Site plans are never at 100% because they're not going to go forward with all that engineering and architectural work until it gets approved. So once that gets approved, they'll backfill all that detail and bring that to the city staff. So they're going to need permits from engineering for their stormwater from fire, of course, county construction code, a land use permit, a utility permit. They'll have to go through right-of-way permitting. And then I did note in the staff report that there are some items that I put on the attorney's radar that we'll be working on in the background before August. For instance, our street crosses their property with no easement. So that's something that we have to clean up, that we probably just let scope away from us over the decades. So those are the things that we'd be working on. And then once they get a finalized design for the trail, then they'll have to get a consent to construct, I think it's called, easement, because it will be on our property, so we gotta give them permission to do that. And Parks will be involved as well with that.
And so I have heard some grumbling about the steepness, the vertical issues of that trail connection. So that would be addressed at that point, whether it was even really feasible or not?
Yeah, when they first brought the concept to you in December, if you remember, that trail connection, in the absence of the topo that they didn't have surveyed yet, showed the switchbacks to accommodate the grade. Now with the topo, they realize they don't have to do that as much, what the Planning Commission liked, because it means less disturbance, so they have a more direct line. But if you look, the trail itself doesn't go straight down. It goes at an angle, and that is to keep the grade to an ADA level with the working with the
An
topography.
ADA level.
Correct, yep. Now, there will be a more direct stair route, so if pedestrians want to just walk straight there, they can. And they've also been open to including the nice little wheel rail on the side of the stairs, so if you just want to push your bike up or down, you can as well. for
Because
more
the
direct
ADA
access.
route would also be used by bicycles, right?
Yes, yeah, that would be the ramp part.
Okay.
I say ramp, but more the graded trail section.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Is that it?
Other questions? Go ahead, Jackie.
Are these-
I wanted to follow up on just a couple of things and maybe consider these as future requests. One is the December letter that we received from the Watershed Center that, expressed some concerns about the original design of that trail connector. And is it possible to close that loop with the Watershed Center and eventually get their official blessing on new plans, new configuration?
Yeah, I mean, that would be up to them. As I noted, the Watershed Center, specifically the Baykeeper, met with Leslie and I about a month ago about the plans when the public hearing notice went out. And we let her know that the pavilion and the original concept is no longer part of it, and that the trail would be designed in a way to minimize the impact. And they were fine with it from what they expressed, so.
I guess I would just like to have an official record of that. That would be very helpful to me in making a final decision. And then also, I wondered if our Parks Department arborist might, or maybe they've already had a chance to look at the property and identify trees of significant size and benefit, and whether there are any opportunities for preservation of those. I know when I walked the property, probably 8 months ago now, there were some very significantly sized oak trees, and some of them close to the current building, some not. And I didn't know if the skill of our arborist could be put into play here to just let us know what trees specifically might be lost and the consequences.
Yeah, and the plan set does indicate which trees are going to be removed. They're all the trees with an X in the center of them. Those are the ones on the page that are slated for removal.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from our arborist about just what the loss of those trees means.
Yeah.
Thanks.
For Michelle.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, on I guess the topic of trees, but more, to me, it's more forward-looking to opportunity for planting trees. It's my understanding that the existing rail, it's not just a right-of-way for rail, it's actually a parcel that MDOT rail has there. And so Woodmere Avenue, so the city has a right-of-way for Woodmere, but then there's MDOT property. And so the property between the pavement of Woodmere and the actual railroad tracks, and this isn't for tonight, but just for future consideration, what's the city allowed to do there? Are we, it looks like, it appears that we mow that property. There and in looking at the maps that are provided in the packet, even the sidewalk on the western side of Woodmere appears to be outside of the right-of-way line, outside of the city's right-of-way line for Woodmere, so it's actually on MDOT property. So there might be some legal things to figure out, but where I'm headed is further north in that same space, there are quite a few trees growing. But in this particular part, there are no trees growing. So maybe even if the city can't technically plant trees, maybe Friends of Traverse City Trees could plant trees on MDOT property, and they would be allowed to grow there, just as far as what might be possible in the future. Thanks.
I see our attorney taking notes, so I think that has been duly noted. Any other questions? Well, I will just say, well, and first of all, a couple times, Mr. Pulliam, it looked like you might want to get up. Did you want to say anything else, Tim? Or if you don't, it's fine, too. I didn't want to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. I mean, I can real quick, but I did definitely, the second I saw that letter come in months ago, I contacted the Watershed Center and spoke with them and made sure to address their concerns. I mean, stormwater is going to be an important consideration on this project. We are doing 100% on-site stormwater management. Well, on the site of the development we're doing, some of it is actually going to be on city property, which is some of the things we need to work out with the city attorney. But, and, you know, so that was one thing. I don't remember the other thing. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I think Sean covered them pretty well, but we definitely were on it with the watershed.
Okay. Well, I would just say, not surprising, the consideration coming from Mr. Pulliam, who's part of the team behind Keene. And also, as somebody who has lived in that corridor for over 10 years and worked in that corridor I worked in it for 18 years, I'm super excited about this coming in. I know other people have shared their thoughts too, and just excited to see what's going to happen there. And also somebody who's huffed and puffed up that side of the TART trail that exists right now, an ADA compliant grade sounds really nice. So with that, I'll note that we will have the public hearing for this on August 4th. This was just an introduction, so there will be no action taken on this item tonight, but there will be a public hearing on the 4th, so I'll try to remember my gavel. And with that, unless there was anything else from the commission, I guess I'll be nice. Does anybody have any public comment on this item? All right, just seeing none. Sometimes when I move ahead of it, somebody actually does and waves from the crowd. So with that, we'll move on to item number 3, which is the consideration of authorizing documents for an agreement with J. Peterson Homes. And I don't know if Deb or
I think
Michelle's going to lead. Okay.
Yep, Michelle is here prepared to talk about this. This is an interesting public-private partnership opportunity. It's certainly something that you know, we're excited to bring before the board, kind of a first of its kind, I think, that I'm familiar with. But I will allow Michelle to kind of give a little bit more insight on where we are, and thank you all for your questions that were answered early in regards to this issue.
Thank you, Deb. So Mr. Peterson is here tonight too, and I would like to introduce him. He approached the city a few months ago with the idea to refurbish the property across the street from a building that he is looking to purchase. So the parcel is, it's a little neglected piece of property. I think we can all agree it could look nicer. The City Parks Department mows it right now, but that's all we do. It's just one of those properties that we take care of, like other properties aren't necessarily parkland, but they're in the city. So this, as Deb mentioned, is an opportunity for a public and private partnership. I will let Mr. Peterson, he has provided or prepared a presentation for you to prepare his vision and whatnot, but I just wanted to say that the collaboration has been based on what the city is requiring for this, so it will go through and meet the city standards. The city would hold the contracts for bidding. We would take care of making sure that it meets the standards for tree removal and landscaping and any engineering that needs to happen. So tonight before you is kind of the next steps to move forward. If you would like to approve an agreement where a funding agreement with the city and J. Peterson Homes to move this project forward. So the concept, it's all very conceptual right now. We have discussed it. And with that, I will leave it open to Mr. Joel Peterson.
Thank you. I will say that we did purchase the building, so I'm now the proud owner of the Mid-America Title Building. And right now, my office is down the street at 516 East Front Street. What kind of brought this all to fruition, and I never planned on, trying to build this building or anything else, but just an opportunity came up down the street, and we looked at this piece of property. And, people have said, well, how did you come up with this concept? And I'm like, well, I'm just kind of a practical person. It's like, well, I'm looking across the street, at what we're trying to do, and looking at this, kind of neglected piece of city property. No offense, but yeah, it's not the most attractive thing in the world. So I just approached the Parks Department with this idea, and here we are today. So Michelle and her team, the arborist, and Lauren, everybody's been very collaborative in this process. We're trying to be very respectful of the step-by-step process here, as far as the going in front of parks, going in front of planning, now in front of the city commission. So I do think it's a great concept for the city. There are a lot of other cities in the country that beautify their downtowns this way, and I hope we can be a model for this. We're estimating, I don't know if it's been brought up, but we're estimating roughly $100,000 investment on our part into this park, and I think it'll be a great addition to that end of Front Street, which is a growing end of Front Street, and will be a real benefit to the public. So, can I answer any questions?
Jackie?
Sure.
I saw you going for the glasses there, so.
That's usually a sign. I had some questions beforehand, some of which were answered. I was in receipt of a letter from the Watershed Center today regarding some concerns about changes in vegetation, existing vegetation, and how can we best protect the quality of the water and minimize concerns about stormwater runoff and so forth. And I know that the original proposal had some removal of either trees that were dead or trees that were non-natives or less desirable, as well as the possibility for adding some impervious surface. And I just wondered, where do we stand on those issues relative to your vision for the design?
Sure. And the parks have really taken the lead on that. I mean, I came up with an original kind of landscape concept, and then got some input from parks a couple different times, and we had a meeting on site with Michelle and the arborist. Anything within that 10-foot river setback, and there's not that many trees coming out, or even dead trees coming out of that area, but that's a 2-for-1 replacement with native trees. And anything that's taken out as far as like dead trees, 'cause that's really all we're taking out is just dead and mostly dead trees. And the arborist, I had an arborist there from Deering Tree Service, and then the city arborist, is being replaced with native trees. So most everything on that property right now are not native trees, which I know is not a main consideration of the Parks Department, because basically, they're looking at size of trees and condition, not necessarily whether they're, native or not, because if we're going to take out all non-native trees, we'd clear every tree off the site except for like 2 or 3, so, which we're not doing. So all the large specimen trees stay, and we're just, basically cleaning up the underbrush and replacing with native trees and bushes.
And I see Michelle Hunt got up. Did you want to comment on this too, Michelle?
I wanted to comment on the ADA, or, well, I'm thinking ADA, the impervious surface. So we would like this space. The space should be ADA compliant, and in order to do that, we need to introduce some impervious surfaces so that we can have the area. You got the landscaping plan. There was like an overlook with the picnic area, so that is because we want to make sure that this is ADA compliant. Does that answer your question about the added?
I think so. So approximate dimensions of the impervious surface would be the size of a picnic table plus a landing pad? Is that what
I
you're
would say
saying?
more like 3 picnic tables.
Ah,
Mhm.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But also, it's conceptual at this point, so when we go to design team and we discuss it internally, those things can change also to better suit the needs of this parcel.
Thanks.
Commissioner Wilson, and then Werner, and then Shaw, and then Treadwell.
Unless I didn't scroll and read far enough, but what's the lifespan of this?
The agreement?
No, the actual,
Vegetation.
the pavers and the overlook deck and everything else. Like, how long until we have to pay to replace all this stuff?
Oh, sure. Those specs have not been figured out yet, but we would build it to the standards of materials that we would use that we wouldn't be, within 5 years, hopefully longer than that. So it would be a wood deck, most likely.
Like 20?
Yeah. Longer if we use black locust.
Oh, there we go. Commissioner Warner?
Yeah, just mostly a couple of quick comments. First, I did walk down there earlier today, and it looked like Norm Fred and his group did an excellent job of cleaning up that space. It looks amazing compared to previous views of it that I've had. But there is still leftover construction waste from Honor Bank when they used it as a staging area for their bank. So there's concrete waste because they were mixing concrete on the city property, and just, there's clean tools and whatnot. So there's lumps there. You'll see them. So it'll be great to have that cleaned up. And then 2 other things. One, I know this is conceptual, but I would encourage, and it was in my email to the assistant city manager today, reaching out to the tribe and others as far as other native species to be planted there, whether it's white cedar or other things, just what's appropriate, for the river. And then finally, we did a great job, I think, for the West End Beach by saying no plastic in the landscape fabric. If we could do the same for this project, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Absolutely, thank you.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yeah, first of all, I'm really happy about this private support to help maintain our parks, and also that the private support is ceding the planning to the experts, so it's money without micromanaging. Thank you very much. I have a couple of concerns. There's already a lot of concrete in this tiny little area, and so if there's anything, bricks are pervious, and you can still roll a wheelchair or a cart onto bricks, and it's better than concrete. So anything you can do to make that picnic space pervious, I would be really happy about. I'm looking at this plan and seeing these circles with the X's in the middle. Are those trees that are coming out?
Trees going in.
Those are trees going in. So even though there's a bunch of black locusts and stuff like that, you're not planning to rip those out of the banks and...
No, so when we met on site, we identified where the 10-foot setback is, and right now, and I also provided at the beginning of this that the trees need to have a certain percentage of dead canopy, for safety, that we need to remove them, and it was about 70%. So right now, the only 2 trees that are, so the big black willows are staying, and the only tree that's coming out within the high water setback is a 10-inch box, that one's staying, is a spruce that is more than 70% dead.
Okay.
The rest are all behind the water setback, and they are either some locust, some apple, or a box elder. And like I said, it's still a preliminary at this point.
Okay. The only thing that I wondered about is that you've got the shade tree replacements are the boxwoods, and they are 2.5 inches You know, how long does it take to grow a shade tree if you start with a little wibbly thing that's, I mean, is there anything we can do to get that a little bit larger? That would be nicer, you know, to get some shade back in there before we're all dead and in the ground.
It can be discussed, sure, certainly.
And I think that, you know, that letter we got from the watershed was really helpful, and I hope that coincides with your plans for the redevelopment of that park as well.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Treadwell, you had your hand up?
Yes, I've got a number of concerns, echoing what the Watershed Center stated about the loss in, even if we're replanting, we are still having some loss of tree canopy cover, which, if we're looking at it as a parkland, yes, that's shade for people sitting on the picnic benches or watching the parade going down Front Street, as we saw a couple days ago. But looking from an ecosystem health perspective, that is one of the few places that is full shade coverage over the river from natural shade trees. On the other side of Honor Bank, starting right down here at the end of Boardman, for about a block, you do have also natural riverbank, but that does have less shade cover and less underbrush. And while it is a narrower strip of land, that actually results in less wildlife and more trash along it. Yes, thanks to Norm Fred and myself, I guess. I am a member of Borden River Clean Sweep, and I've participated in both of our downtown river cleanups that have helped reduce the amount of trash, but there's less trash in this parcel than there is in the parcel just at the end of Boardman, because of the more natural feel. You don't have as much use of this area. You don't have people going down there to fish and getting all their lures stuck in the lines. I mean, stuck in the trees, which can be a significant hazard to wildlife. Yes, you can plant more shade trees, but it will take some time to grow, and in the meantime, you're losing both the shade at the top level, but the multi-story layers of the canopy, the brush, and the herbaceous layer that are important for our muskrat, our mink. I'd love to see otter, but I haven't seen any otter through this area. Kingfishers and other wildlife that people enjoy while they're going down the river. This is a stretch of the Borden River where there is very little native tree cover on the other side of the road, the other side of the river, because it's wedged between the river and Grandview Parkway. So the trees right here are playing a larger role in providing shade cover and providing habitat for our native wildlife.
Thank you for that. Okay, we've ventured a little into commentary now. Could I get a motion, or does anybody else have any other questions at this point? Go ahead, Tim.
I'll make the motion that the mayor and city clerk execute a funding agreement with J. Peterson Homes LLC for improvements to 429 East Front Street as submitted with the official materials for the City Commission's July 7, 2025 meeting, with any agreements for improvements to the city-owned property that are in excess of the city manager's spending authority to be brought back to the City Commission for authorization, with the funding agreement subject to approval as to its substance by the acting city manager and its form by the city attorney.
Thank you for that, Commissioners Warner and Pro Tem Wilson. We can go back now to further commentary. I just wanted to get that going. Go ahead, Jackie.
In terms of the funding, because that's what this motion is about, thank you for the estimate of the private investment amount. And I guess our city contribution is more expertise and staff time and ongoing maintenance and materials. And Is there any way for us to foresee or estimate what we're taking on? And then also an add-on question to that. Is there consideration of converting this to park property, and are there pros and cons about that idea?
However you want to take that. I'm assuming that those answers come from you, Michelle.
Well, more parkland is great, but I don't logistically know how that would work so much, so I look to my colleagues to answer that question. I do have models that could determine the amount of maintenance cost. One of the things that makes this such a great partnership is I was looking at the increased maintenance costs and I didn't see a burden to the Parks Department. We have already the trash pickup there. We already mow there. With the tree watering, that will be one element that we will have to take care of. So we will have to make sure the trees are watered for the first year of their life. So, but I don't see that as any different than the normal tree planting we do twice a year. So, and to Commissioner Wilson's question earlier about the maintenance of the newer infrastructure, we will have to have that as a consideration for design, and it's an important reminder. So if you're looking for actual numbers, stay tuned, and I'd be happy to get those to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have other questions?
Well, I wondered, the question about the conversion to parkland, I wondered if the city attorney has any insight about that, or?
I'm sorry, can you?
Yes.
I was having a
right
sidebar.
Right now, we have this
apologize.
non-park city property, and I just wondered, as we convert this to a park-like use, is it feasible to think about making that an official pocket park of some kind?
Yeah,
Or, and is it burdensome to do that?
No, the city commission can designate something as a parkland on your own. It can also happen when the city acquires property. That property can come with the designation, like a deed restriction, like we talked about earlier in the meeting when it came from MDOT with the designation that it has to be used for park. And then when the city accepts that piece of property, that is a designation. So no, it can be done.
I just had a quick question, and then I'll open it back up. But so just to, well, not just a question, clarification. So it sounds like while we're asking for this agreement for everything to move forward, Michelle, the intention is kind of for Mr. Peterson, yourself, our arborist, and everyone to work together to make this kind of the best park, potential park that we can make it in this space. A question I did have, because I haven't been through there lately, not on a parade route, but it seems to me that along that area there is not a lot of really great, and I've noticed this before when walking on the boardwalk, a lot of great ADA accessible spaces along the river. And so I just wanted to check in with you on that. Is that a kind of a false assumption on my point, or is this, I see this when I'm looking at this as a plus that we, much like when we talked about West End, we don't have a lot of great ADA access to a lot of our natural, or especially our water. And so is that wrong? Are there a few others there, or?
Well, I look at Wellington Plaza. It's not the most ADA accessible, and that's right on the river, getting to experience it. So why should people be left out of that experience? And this is a wonderful opportunity to do so. And with the Overlook, which will be ADA accessible, like I said, it's a good opportunity for that. Wellington Plaza is kind of the best example I can think of that's like right down the street that doesn't offer what this property would be able to offer. No, you can't get right down to the water like you could with that property, but the Overlook is going to provide that experience.
Thank you. And then I'll open it back up. I know everybody, I think, had at least one go so far. Tim?
Just quick comment on the park, because we've talked about parks and what's a park at previous city commission discussions. Not being an attorney, but I would anticipate that if we take this motion that moves forward, it essentially becomes a park, even if we don't officially designate it as a park, because we're improving it as a park. It will be used as a park, and so then it will, to me, it will be a park, and the city would, residents would get quite upset if we tried to sell it off and pretend it wasn't a park. So I think by this action, and maybe not tonight's, but subsequent actions, we are making it a park and in essence protecting it from future development.
Go ahead.
Can I just, yeah, I think I agree that you're probably right about that. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that it's a long, skinny parcel, and there is a piece of wastewater infrastructure on the parcel, so that exists now that is consistent with the use, but that could play into that conversation if it ever were to come up.
Okay, go ahead, Heather.
No, I totally agree that this is probably something we should pursue. What exactly is it called now? Just city property?
Yeah, it's just a parcel. I don't think it has
Okay.
a name.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or comments at this time? Go ahead, Jackie.
You mentioned the wastewater infrastructure, and I'm presuming that this is not going to be disturbed or impacted in any way, shape, or form. Okay.
Not at all.
No.
Thank you.
It's the building. And we
Yeah.
often actually, I guess for the public, nobody asked me, but we get questions, oh, it's such a pretty building, why don't we do something with it? And it's a pump station, so we're not going to do anything with it, but it is a nice-looking building.
Okay.
And there's underground
Correct.
infrastructure
Yep.
also.
Yep.
Okay.
Do we have another question, Commissioner?
Yeah,
Shaw?
just comment that because of that building and because of the underground infrastructure, we already have a significant amount of concrete pad on this site, and this will increase the impervious area with the overlook and the brick area. It's a greater square footage than the covered bike parking already, and though people walking on grass doesn't mean it's not grass. Even the Cherry Festival and the open space will be green again in another couple weeks. But the more use you have, the more soil compaction exists and the less the natural filtration is. In an area that is already limited in the amount of natural pervious surface that exists here.
Any other thoughts or questions? I'll open it up. Is there any public comment on this item? Going once. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell,
No.
Commissioner Werner,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
and Mayor Shamrow.
Yes, motion passes. And with that, we'll move on now to appointments, and this is an ad hoc interview, establishing an ad hoc for 2 Parks and Recs Commission seats. Go ahead.
I'm happy to make the motion. However, there are 2 different compositions, it looks like, of this ad hoc.
Oh.
On 187, it's Anderson, Werner, and Shaw, and on 188, it's Shaw, Treadwell, and Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's what.
That's what
Commissioner
Jackie was
Anderson
talking
referring to.
Okay.
I didn't do that
Anderson-
well.
Yeah.
I'm on the next one.
Apologies. I didn't realize that that's what the issue
sorry.
was.
So may I make the motion on on page
Yes,
187?
please do.
Sure.
I was going to say,
All
let's
right.
go with whatever the official.
Okay, I move that the City Commission Ad Hoc Interview Committee be established to make a recommendation regarding 2 appointments to the Parks and Rec Commission, terms expiring September 1, 2028, currently held by Scott Maury and Jennifer Loop, and that Commissioner Shaw, Commissioner Anderson, and Commissioner Werner be appointed to such committee with Commissioner Shaw as chair.
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Any other comments on this item? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And this is next is our ad hoc interview committee for 4 3-year terms for Brown Bridge. Does anybody want to make that motion? Or should we sit here all night? Okay, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'll move that the city commission ad hoc, that the city commission ad hoc interview committee be established to make a recommendation regarding 4 appointments to the Brown Bridge Advisory Committee, terms expiring October 6, 2028, currently held by Judy Nemitz, James Cure, Jacqueline Anders, and Jamie Kidwell Bricks, and that Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, Commissioner Anderson, and Commissioner Treadwell be appointed to such committee with Mayor Pro Tem Wilson as chair.
Support.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Wilson and Commissioner Treadwell. And I commend both Commissioner Shaw and Mayor Pro Tem Wilson for nominating themselves for committees, even though we're kind of stuck with them. I always appreciate you guys stepping forward and just embracing the ad hocs. So with that, any other comments? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, with that, we will move on to our reports and announcements. Does anybody have any reports from their neck of the woods? Lots of head shaking. I know we've had a couple quiet weeks, but
It's been a busy week of Cherry Festival.
yes. And so nothing official out of Cherry Festival, but certainly kept everybody busy and end of the month. So we look forward to some reports in the near future then. So with that, I will then open up general public comment. Is there any general public comment tonight? I don't see our one member of the public moving, so I will, I'll go ahead and close that out. And any final comments from commissioners? Seeing none, I will adjourn the meeting. Everybody have a great night. We'll probably still have some sunlight out there.
Yeah, for about an hour and 15 minutes.
Unless it's raining. That was what I was hearing might happen before.
I hope it's not.